Cross Question, an hour of political debate with politicians and commentators every week at 8 o'clock on Wednesday. If you'd like to watch us, you can do so via the LBC website at lbc.co.uk, via the LBC Facebook page, Twitter feed or YouTube channel. If you'd like to ask our guests a question, you can submit it via the Cross Question section on my presenter page on the website, or simply phone 0345 6060 973. And if you want to chat along with us on Twitter, use the hashtag Cross Question. With us tonight is the former Labour Transport Secretary and I think I can safely say devout Remain advocate Lord Andrew Adonis, the Conservative MP for South West Norfolk and Chief Secretary to the Treasury Liz Truss, economics commentator for The Telegraph and my fellow CNN Talk panellist and author of Clean Brexit Liam Halligan, and Gisela Stewart, former Labour MP for Edgbaston and co-chair of Vote Leave. That's your panel. Welcome to them all, but let's get going with your questions.
Call 0345 6060 973. Tweet at LBC. Text 84850. Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC.
Well, welcome to you all. It's very good to have you on our first edition. We've already booked up guests right up until Christmas, so you're very lucky to be on the first one. As I say, if you want to get in touch with us, 0345 6060 973 to put your question to our callers. Our first question isn't quite ready yet, can you believe, which is very annoying. Let's take a text then instead, saying, can you ask Andy Adonis? Have you ever been called Andy?
At school once. Never happened again.
Did you biff the person?
No, we're not getting into what happened.
Can you ask Andrew Adonis that the people's vote say that democracy did not stop in 2016, but where was it when Major pushed through the treaty? Then Blair promised a referendum on the treaty and never delivered on this promise. Where was the people's vote then?
Well, I wasn't really around then, so I can't really speak for John Major. I can't speak for John Major. With Tony Blair, well, actually, Gisela's in a much better position to discuss that because she was actually on the Constitutional Convention, which is what the controversy was about, whether there should be a referendum on it. But of course, this is a distinctly different issue, whether we're going to leave the European Union or whether we're going to accede to new treaties. We'd all agreed that we'd have referendums if we were going to sign new treaties, which gave more powers to Brussels. But it was until David Cameron did the in-out referendum, there hadn't been any groundswell of opinion in favour of an in-out referendum on the principle of membership of the EU. Where that came from, of course, was the Referendum Party and then UKIP as a political party. And what's essentially happened in British politics over the last 20 years is that UKIP and Nigel Farage have done a reverse takeover of the Conservative Party, so much so that I understand that the senior figures in UKIP are trying to join the Conservative Party at the moment. I mean, you know more about this than I do, Iain, because this is your party. But my understanding is that they're trying to join it, and there's a big battle going on in the members whether they're going to be allowed to.
We're not off to a very good start. You know full well that I've not been a Conservative Party member since 2010, a full 8 years. I'm not party politically aligned, so I'd be grateful if you'd withdraw that.
I'm sorry. I thought you were still a member of the Conservative Party.
I'm not. But let's go to our first caller. Anne's in Lewisham. Anne, what would you like to say?
Good evening.
Hello.
Hello?
Go ahead.
I'd like to ask, why is Theresa May not listening to the people of the UK when there is now a clear and obvious lack of support for Brexit, even among those who originally voted for it?
Liam Halligan, let's go to you first.
I can't hear anything. We can't actually hear the questions, Iain, sorry.
You have to tell us.
This is a really good start, isn't it?
I can guess.
Anne says, why is Theresa May not listening to the people of the UK when there is a clear and obvious lack of support for Brexit, even among those who originally voted for it?
Well, good evening, Anne. I wouldn't accept that there's a clear and obvious lack of support for Brexit. The polls have actually held up pretty well. What there is, I think there's widespread disconsternation at the bungling efforts that the government have made to negotiate a decent Brexit. But despite those difficulties with the actual process of Brexit, rather than the destination that we end up in, polls show that we're still pretty close to where we were in that fateful day in June 2016, Iain, when you and I sat in this studio with the majority of people in favour of leaving the European Union. I think what we can see, and I suspect we'll be talking about this a bit more, is there's very little support for a second referendum. A lot of Remainers I know, they think democracy is the most important thing and we should go for the best Brexit that we possibly can, rather than holding another referendum when we haven't even implemented the first. I mean, I was struck by recent opinion polls. The only major political party, nationwide party, that wanted to have a second referendum, the Lib Dems, they had their worst result in their history in 2017, and they're now polling below UKIP, having just lost 4 points in the poll.
Liz Truss.
In terms of the whole campaign, I mean, I don't think it's true at all that people have changed their view. My constituency voted heavily to leave. People want to see us get on with it. They want to see the process come to an end and us having left the European Union. And I think the reality is that there are some parts of the country where there are a lot of people that supported Remain, but the vast majority of people in Britain, even those, like in my case, who supported Remain in the first place, now want to get on with it and get the deal done.
Andrew Donis, what do you say to Anne and Lewisham?
Well, there clearly isn't a vast majority that want this to happen. It was a 52-48 decision last time, which was a narrow vote, because of course we're a very large country, and what the polls show is that the great majority now both want to have a people's vote, and they would now vote in favour of staying in the EU. But on the issue as to why we should have a vote and why it's democratic, what's becoming increasingly clear is that 2 years ago there was no leave proposition on the table. This is the big problem we've been wrestling with ever since, that leave can mean everything from a situation like Norway, where we basically stay in most of the institutions of the European Union but aren't around the table of the Council of Ministers, or it means leaving the customs union, leaving the single market, and having a situation where we just depend upon the World Trade Organization and have no real protection for our trade and our economy. Now, as people come to terms with that, and indeed as the government itself has started suggesting that there could be no deal, which would mean stockpiling food, only 6 weeks' supplies of medicine and so on, that's leading to a groundswell of opinion amongst the people in favour of people's vote on the actual terms. Polls show an overwhelming majority now in favour of people's vote, and that's what I think is driving this.
After the referendum, I ended up chairing Change Britain, which the point was to bring Remainers and Leavers together to deliver a good outcome of the referendum decision. We've been doing polling and focus groups. What has happened is that the opinions have hardened in terms of which way you went, and there's a big chunk in the middle who essentially go and say, haven't we left yet? Why are you still talking about it? But I want to throw a real challenge back to you. If you think, why do politicians draw a salary check? We draw it because we are there as representatives of strands of opinion. It is supposed to be our job to then find solutions, to strike compromises, to accommodate. But this referendum was for the first time when a significant section of the political establishment essentially spent their entire energy refusing to accept the outcome. I really wish that we'd have a conversation here now which goes and says, what is the best solution, rather than talking about non-existing groundswells.
What is the best solution? No one seems to know what that is.
Let's come on to that. If you could put your headphones on, hopefully they will work now. Let's go to Matthew in Barwell, who joins us on FaceTime video. Matthew, what would you like to ask?
Hi there, Ian. And
Hi.
It's a great honour to be the first FaceTime caller.
The wonders of technology, Matthew.
Onto what I'm sure is going to be a fantastic programme. Can I ask, quoting David Davis, from a few years ago, saying, is a democracy only a democracy if people can change their minds? And if all four of your panellists do accept that, do they therefore accept that there should be a people's vote on the final deal?
Okay. Matthew, thank you very much. Liz Truss, you have changed your mind, haven't you? Because you voted Remain, but you've now flipped.
That's right. And the reason I supported Remain is I was concerned about the economy. I'm somebody who's always been sceptical of the European Union. I was DEFRA secretary. I had to sit through European councils. I understand the frustration, the bureaucracy, the lack of accountability, but I was concerned about the economic impact.
And you're not now?
Well, since the referendum, the predictions have not come true. There wasn't a fall off a cliff edge. Well, we had the vote, and the predictions were that immediately after the vote the economy would tank, and it didn't. And in fact, we've got lowest levels of unemployment since the 1970s. We're seeing increased investment in areas like technology, and the economic fundamentals are sound. And certainly as a government minister looking at the plans for no deal, but also looking at our plans for a deal, in both cases, I think we will do well following that. So my
what you're
concerns
basically saying
have
is that
been
you were very
assuaged.
gullible.
Well, I'm saying that I listened to the debate at the time. I think there was an interesting debate during the referendum. People voted to take the plunge. They voted to take a risk. I now think that was the right thing to do. If I could go back again, I would change what I determined at the time. But I think, I'm admitting that I've changed my mind over time. I don't think that's a problem.
Okay. Liam Halligan, you've written a book on this, and it's called Clean Brexit. You clearly think it ought to be clean. But do you detect that a lot of people have changed their minds one way or the other?
No, I think the vote has held up remarkably well, despite a constant drumbeat of negativity since the vote, before and since the vote, trying to scare the British public into first voting for Brexit. An immediate and profound economic shock, said the Treasury in a 408-page report.
You mean voting against Brexit?
Yeah, just if we voted to leave the European Union, that didn't happen. We're growing pretty well in the UK. I don't see any huge groundswell of opinion. I see honourable politicians like Liz Truss, and a very grown-up response there, if I may say so. She voted Remain.
That's enough creeping.
She voted Remain.
I'm going to be nice to him on Saturday.
She voted Remain, but she's part of a government that is committed to implement Brexit. And the key difference here is we had a referendum. It wasn't a general election, it was a referendum. Parliament voted 6-1, as did the Lords, for a referendum bill to give the decision back to the British people. In the biggest act of democracy ever, they voted to leave, and it's incumbent on politicians to implement that. And if they don't, a lot of people in this country, I'm not going to predict civil unrest, but a lot of people in this country, Iain, will never vote again.
Just, Andrew, on the timing of a second referendum or people's vote, isn't time running out? Because the Electoral Commission have to go through a process which I gather takes several months, and there has to be presumably a referendum bill, and then you have however many months it would be for the referendum. Well, if we're going to leave on March the 29th, time is running out for that, isn't it?
Well, maybe Liz can tell us when we're going to get the treaty and agreement. So if we know when it is at the moment, we're in a no man's land where we just simply don't know.
There's still not a lot of time.
Well, if it comes in October, and we were told it was going to be after the European Council at the end of October, but now the Brexit Secretary, Dominic Raab, has said that he may need some leeway. Well, you and I know what leeway means. It may mean, I don't know if leeway, maybe Liz will tell us, is leeway 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. However, the crucial thing is that we take a decision in principle as to what we're going to do if we're going to hold a people's vote by March, because it's perfectly possible, of course, to extend the period for what's called Article 50, which is the period within which we negotiate for the purposes of holding a referendum.
You mean
so we could, and if we did that, that means we could hold our people's vote next summer, and we wouldn't be bound by the end of March.
It was made very clear to people during the referendum that this was the final vote. This would decide whether or not we left. It wasn't a contingent vote on what deal we would get. It was a deal on whether we would leave. And earlier Andrew talked about, do we want to stay in some institutions? It's pretty clear to me, if you're leaving the European Union, you're leaving those institutions, and that includes the single market, includes the customs union.
Gisela, I'm going to assume that you kind of agree with Liam on this, but I will come back to you first when we come back after the break. So if you do keep calling us, 0345 6060 973, if you have questions for our panel, Liz Truss, Andrew Adonis, Gisela Stewart and Liam Halligan. You're listening to LBC's Cross Question. I'm Iain Dale. It's 8:16.
This is LBC.
Range Rover Evoque is at home at the city's most stylish addresses and in the countryside's wildest destinations. It can cross continents and take 5 friends to the theatre. It's equally at ease with a walk on the wild side as it is delivering a table of 5 to their favourite restaurant. Range Rover Evoque, born in the wild, adapted to the city. This September from just £349 a month on Land Rover Personal Contract Hire. Search Evoque offer for details. Land Rover, above and beyond.
Initial rental £4,188, 36-month term, subject to status, 10,000 miles per annum. Mileage and return conditions apply. Offer ends 30th of September 2018. Available at participating retailers only. Visit landrover.co.uk.
On the evening of Tuesday the 3rd, my husband and I were discussing how best to sell our house. I told him Purple Bricks make you do it all yourself. That was fake news. Purple Bricks can do everything from viewings to negotiating your sale. For this, I would like to apologise to my husband unreservedly. We request privacy at this difficult time. Thank you.
Oh dear, oh dear. Save yourself from commisery at purplebricks.co.uk.
Fixed fee payable on instruction or after 10 months viewing service costs extra. See website for more details.
Making healthy lunches for your kids isn't easy, but I've got 3 tips for you. At the Co-op, a pack of fair trade bananas is only 59p. A family pack of apples is just 99p. A 2-pack of red gem lettuce only 79p. A bit of salad in their sarnies. Unfortunately, I don't have any tips to get them out of the house on time. Subject to availability. See in store for details.
Ellie, your turn. What do you want to be when you grow up?
A unicorn.
With a pretty rainbow horn?
Not that kind of unicorn. Ugh, a unicorn is a privately held business valued at over $1 billion. I'm going to start my own tech company and give the whole world clean energy.
That's... wow. Good for you, Ellie. Who's next?
At Virgin Money, we want to help businesses with big ideas and even bigger ambitions. Our business savings accounts all have competitive interest rates, so we'll look after your money while you focus on greatness. Find out more at virginmoney.com or visit your local Virgin Money lounge.
From putting up blinds to plumbing in bathrooms, there's a local hero for that. And from tiling floors to fixing electrics, there's a local hero for that. It's easy to book a trusted tradesperson at localheroes.com. Plus, all work comes with a 12-month British Gas guarantee. Join the thousands across the UK who've already used a local hero. Search Local Heroes.
It's time. Time to join the millions of people that meet happy with Zoom video conferencing. With stunning HD video, crisp audio, and instant wireless sharing across any mobile, tablet, or desktop device. But the best thing about Zoom? It just works. So ditch the distractions, join the movement, and meet happy with Zoom video conferencing. Visit zoom.us to set up your free account today. That's zoom.us. Zoom video conferencing.
Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC.
It's 8:20 here on LBC. Let me just remind you of our guests in the studio. Liz Truss, who's Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Andrew Adonis, Labour peer, Gisela Stewart, Chair of Change Britain, former Labour MP for Birmingham Edgbaston, and Liam Halligan, economist and author of Clean Brexit. If you would like to ask them a question, 0345 6060 973, and even more, if you want to watch us, you can do so on the LBC website, Facebook page, Twitter feed, YouTube, and Uncle Tom Cobley and all. Let's go to our next question, again on FaceTime video. Ken is in St Albans. Ken, what is your question?
Hello. My question is this. How can people ever trust politicians if we make such an important decision based on a referendum which was plagued by spurious claims and turns out to have been fraudulent?
Gisela Stewart. You were co-chair of Vote Leave, were you not?
I was indeed, and what I thought was interesting is that we've got regulators, and virtually every of the campaigns have, in some kind of another, been found to have breached some of the regulations.
So it's all right then?
No, it's not all right. It just means that some of the way we conduct referendum needs by far greater thought, and I would say that Parliament actually ought to be much more careful before it calls a referendum in future. However, on this one, what we had is not just a referendum. We also had a Article 50 vote in Parliament. We had a general election in 2017 where the major parties said they would implement the outcome of the referendum. To now not actually do that, I think would really undermine people's faith in democratic institutions. But can I just make one other point? I think in the last 7 years or so, the British people made 3 very significant rational decisions about the way they wish to be governed. One was they said they wouldn't change the voting system. The other one was they decided that Scotland would not become independent but remain part of the United Kingdom. And the third one was that we leave the European Union. And I do wish that people would not treat that latter decision as if it was some kind of illness which requires cure, but as a very mature, rational decision about the governance of this country.
But if the vote was won, and as Andrew pointed out earlier, it was 52-48, if the vote was won that narrowly by a campaign that exceeded its spending limits, but which broke various regulations, how can people have confidence in that vote?
Well, if you sort of say if money made the difference, if you say it's the speeding the...
I'm saying everything together.
No, if you say money made the difference, the Remain campaign spent by far more money than the Leave campaign did. The Electoral Commission did not cast any doubt on the outcome. There was an acceptance of the results. But I keep coming back to saying that if elected politicians say once in a lifetime we go to you, the voter, directly, it ill becomes those very politicians who 2 years on go and say, you know what, that is so difficult. We really can't implement what you asked us to do, because then I would really question how they justify their existence.
Andrew.
Well, it appears that Vote Leave broke the law. That's what the Electoral Commission is saying. And the Electoral Commission, as Gisela said, is a statutory body. So I don't treat this lightly at all. And I think it's a very serious state of affairs. And it hasn't worked through yet by any means. I mean, there'll now be fines. There could be legal proceedings. The police are looking at issues to do with the conduct of Vote Leave. And I think some of us are looking very closely at what the police do and don't find. But there clearly are, as Gisela also said, lessons in this for future referendums. And if we're going to have a people's vote in the next year, as I believe we will, then we need to have the spending much more closely regulated than last time. We need to have much better protection, I think, particularly for advertising and the promotion of both sides on Facebook and social media, so that we don't get into a big problem that we've had with the last referendum of large numbers of people questioning the result because what appears to be straightforward illegality.
Liz Truss?
I hate this idea that somehow people have been hoodwinked and they're too idiotic to see through the ploys of campaigns. I think we've never had more information available to people. You can look it up on the internet, you can do fact checks, you can find out about it. And what I thought was exciting about the referendum is people are engaged in politics in a way they hadn't been before. And it has opened up politics. I remember 10 years ago everyone was saying people are bored of politics, all the parties are the same, voters are alienated, they're not involved. Well, this has sent a rocket boost up political engagement. People did understand what they were voting for, and I just find it incredibly patronising to say after the event, because there's a bit of sour grapes and people didn't like the result, that somehow everyone was hoodwinked. That's just nonsense.
But you didn't understand what you were voting for, did you?
Well, I did. I made a decision.
You voted Remain, and now you've changed your mind.
Yeah, and I've changed my mind on the basis of what has happened since, and the fact that the sky hasn't fallen in, the fact that there are exciting possibilities opened up because of Brexit. And when I was deciding how I would vote and which side I would support in the referendum, there were balancing facts on both sides for me, which is that I was frustrated by the European Union. I don't think the future direction is good. I don't support further integration, but I was concerned about the economy. Given that those predictions didn't happen, I think it's perfectly rational for me to change my mind.
Liam, I'm going to bring you first in the next question, but if you've got anything you want to say on this one, then feel free. Thomas is in Worthing. Hi, Thomas.
Good evening.
Evening.
To your guests, which political party would you suggest a liberal-minded, disabled Brexiteer should vote for?
Liberal-minded, disabled Brexiteer. Well, there you go.
It's a tough one. Democracy isn't perfect. I think all the parties are slipping on Brexit now. I don't think the Chequers plan is Brexit. I think it's a ridiculous cop-out that will be devastating for the Prime Minister in the end that's promoting it. I reject Andrew's use of this phrase, and he gets in as much as he can, a people's vote. We had a people's vote. There is a lot of sneering among metropolitan elite Remainers that the great unwashed were too thick to know what they were voting for, and that really riles people. Most of the cleverest people I know in this country are often those with least formal education. These are the people that make Britain...
That's enough about me.
make Britain work. It's not a people's vote, it's a people like us vote. That's what it is, Andrew, and I don't think it reflects well on you, with all respect, and we've been friends a long time, that you are casting aspersions like the EU has, the European Commission has over many years, when the people of Ireland voted in a referendum. Oh, vote again until you get the right result on the Nice Treaty. Oh, vote again until you get the right result on the Amsterdam Treaty. votes in France and Denmark against the European Constitution ignored. That's why we didn't have a referendum. That's why Cameron didn't have a referendum, because he knew he would have lost it.
Well, we're slightly going off Thomas's question there. Which political party should a liberal-minded Brexiteer vote for? I don't know whether you can answer that, Andrew Adonis.
Well, if you're a Brexiter, I hope you won't vote for the Labour Party, because the Labour Party is moving increasingly against Brexit.
30 to 40% of Labour Party voters support Brexit.
But by definition, therefore, the majority were against Brexit. One does the maths on that.
So you ignore all of those Brexit voters in Northern Labour constituencies?
No, I don't ignore them at all. But your caller was saying, which party should you vote for if you want to see Brexit happen? I'm confident that by the time we come to the Prime Minister's treaty, which I think is what Liam has already said, it doesn't even constitute Brexit. He's saying what the Prime Minister's seeking to negotiate is something around her Chequers deal, which still has us in some kind of customs union, and he's now saying that's not Brexit, which sort of shows the problem we've got. So I wouldn't vote Labour if you want to stop Brexit. If you want to stop Brexit, though, if you want to stop Brexit, though, I think you should vote Labour.
Former Labour MP Gisela Stewart.
Well, I'm just slightly puzzled, Andrew. You are still a Labour member of the House of Lords, aren't you?
I certainly am.
And you take the Labour whip, but you're telling people not to vote Labour.
Now, if you want Brexit, I think you should vote for a party that's going to deliver Brexit, and we're not going to deliver Brexit.
So the Labour heartlands in the North East and the North West, who voted in big numbers to leave, come the next local elections, which will be, you say, as you are Brexiteers, don't vote Labour. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying if what you want is Brexit delivered, you should vote for the party that's going to deliver Brexit, which I'm afraid is the Conservatives. If you want to stop Brexit, which is what I think the great majority do, including in those northern constituencies that Gisela has just talked about, then I hope we'll get a bigger Labour vote than we had last time.
Not the Labour front bench does not want to stop Brexit, does it?
Well, we're still waiting to hear what Jeremy Corbyn's view is going to be when he sees the Prime Minister's treaty. But the overwhelming majority of Labour MPs and peers, as Gisela knows, are against Brexit.
But what
There's
did
no
the
great
manifesto
secret
say?
in that.
The 2017 Labour manifesto.
With politicians.
Every Labour MP stood for election in the 2017 election on the promise to implement the referendum.
Yes, but the great problem we've got at the moment is that there isn't a Leave proposition on the table to implement. This is why Liz has been going around the country now, having to start justifying preparations for no deal at all. So once we know what the deal is, at that point, the right thing is a people's vote.
Are you saying there shouldn't be any preparations for no deal?
I don't think we should leave the European Union with no deal at all.
Well,
Absolutely
I know
not.
that,
I've got a very clear view as to what should happen.
Given that it is
it's Liz and the government, though, saying we might leave with no deal. I don't for a moment countenance the possibility of us having stockpiling of food and 6 weeks' worth of medical supplies.
Given the possibility of no deal, wouldn't it be totally irresponsible for the government not to prepare?
No, the totally irresponsible thing is for the government to contemplate leaving the European Union with no deal.
Well, fine, I understand that.
That is a totally irresponsible thing. And
I understand that's your
stance. The British people see that, which is why they want a people's vote.
Any government that is embarking on this, whether you agree with it or not, surely it is their responsibility to prepare for either eventuality. The irresponsibility of the Cameron government was that it didn't prepare for a yes vote.
Well, I agree the Cameron government was irresponsible, but this government is being even more irresponsible. I don't think David Cameron ever contemplated leaving the European Union with no deal at all. So planes won't fly, 60-mile tollbacks at the port, stockpiling of food.
All right.
Nobody voted for that.
Liz Truss, I'm going to take it as read that you think Thomas should vote Conservative if he wants a liberal-minded Brexit. Thomas, there you have your answers. I'm not quite sure they were particularly helpful for you, but there we go. 0345 6060 973. You're listening to LBC's Cross Question. Liz Truss, Andrew Adonis, Gisela Stewart, Liam Halligan with me for the next half an hour taking your calls. It's 8:30 and John Stratford has the LBC News headlines.
The UK has called for a meeting of the UN Security Council tomorrow after 2 Russian nationals were named as suspects in the Salisbury nerve agent attack. Theresa May says they're members of Russia's military intelligence service. A high level of E. coli has been found at the Egyptian hotel where British couple John and Susan Cooper died last month. Tour operator Thomas Cook says the discovery doesn't establish the cause of their deaths. And an Emirates plane has been placed under quarantine at New York's JFK airport after several passengers and crew fell ill on a flight from Dubai. LBC weather, cloud and rain gradually spreading across Wales and southern England tomorrow. Sunshine and showers elsewhere, a high of 22.
This is LBC.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the new Audi Q8.
Behold its road-dominating dimensions, combined with a coupe-like roofline, arriving on 21-inch alloy wheels with HD Matrix LED headlights and packed with Audi technology, including dual touchscreen display and Audi virtual cockpit. The new Audi Q8. It makes a bit of an entrance. 100-piece orchestra, optional extra. Find out more with a test drive at an Audi centre. Audi. Vorsprung durch Technik.
What's your favourite snack time? Mid-morning or a secret midnight one? Either way, there's loads of snacks at the Co-op for £1. Like Ginster's Deep Fill Pepper Steak Slice, Dairylee Lunchable Ham and Cheese, Mattison's Fridge Raiders, Rustler's Barbecue Rib. Right then, time for a snack. Subject to availability. See in store for details.
The twins changed everything. One minute we're looking at flats near cafes and a buzzing nightlife. The next we're obsessing over green spaces and reliable babysitters. So this move was a biggie. Out of town, near family, somewhere we could settle.
Wherever you are on the ladder, the Post Office has lots of mortgages to help you get to where you want to be. Search Post Office Mortgages to find out more. Post Office money mortgages are provided by Bank of Ireland UK. Your home may be repossessed if you do not keep up repayments on your mortgage.
Allow me to present our multi-colour fancy dress costume.
Our costume?
Yeah, you're the home. I'll be the car.
In one costume?
Well, it wouldn't be an Admiral multi-cover costume otherwise.
Of course. Home and car insurance on one policy.
With Admiral Multicover, you can bundle your home and car insurance on one simple policy, even if each has a different renewal date. Perhaps it's time to get your multi-cover deal at admiral.com.
Good old Rosie, she's my Rosie. I love Rosie. A silver summer cloudy on a summer's day. Western making cider the traditional way. A sparkle in the apples and the rolling hay. Rosie brings a taste of true sunshine. Old Rosie.
Old Rosie, the original cloudy cider from Herefordshire. Now that's something to sing about.
I'll never forget that phone call. I used to speak to Mum every Wednesday. She loved to chat. She tried talking to me about organ donation once, and I was like, Mum, why do you want to talk about that? Don't be so morbid. She died soon after. We never did talk about it. And I'll never know if she wanted to be an organ donor or not.
It's Organ Donation Week. Join the millions of people that have already told their family they want to be an organ donor. Don't leave it until it's too late. Words save lives.
Range Rover Evoque is at home at the city's most stylish addresses and in the countryside's wildest destinations. It can cross continents and take 5 friends to the theatre. It's equally at ease with a walk on the wild side as it is delivering a table of 5 to their favourite restaurant. Range Rover Evoque, born in the wild, adapted to the city. This September from just £349 a month on Land Rover personal contract hire. Search Evoque offer for details. Land Rover, above and beyond.
Initial rental £4,188, 36-month term, subject to status, 10,000 miles per annum. Mileage and return conditions apply. Offer ends 30th of September 2018. Available at participating retailers only. Visit landrover.co.uk.
Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC.
It's 25 to 9 here on LBC. Several of you saying it's really unfair. It's 4 Brexiteers against 1. Well, I think I've been quite neutral in this debate. Have I, Andrew?
I need to hasten, having got your membership of the Conservative Party so wrong earlier. Your neutrality personified.
And the thing is, when you build a panel, you're trying to get a reasonable balance between left and right, Brexit and Remain, and all the rest of it. Next week we've got 3 Remainers on the panel. I wonder if I'm going to get criticised for that. We will see.
You're perfectly balanced.
Liz Truss, Andrew Adonis, Gisela Stewart, Liam Halligan with us until 8. If you'd like to watch us, you can do so on the LBC Facebook page, on the LBC website, Twitter feed, or on the YouTube channel. I think we should move away from Brexit now and speak to Chris in Richmond. Chris is on FaceTime video. What would you like to ask, Chris?
Good evening, Ian. Thanks for having me on. And good evening, everyone. Does the panel agree that the government has to do much more to tackle the issue of Russian oligarchs linked to Putin laundering their dirty money in London property and elsewhere in our economy?
I should betray a secret that Chris normally rings in my programme on Brexit, so I'm delighted that he's asking something rather different today. Liz Truss.
Well, we have already taken significant action on this issue to deal with the issue of money laundering, and I think the PM statement today was very strong. We succeeded in moving international opinion on this in terms of the expelling of diplomats, but really, this is fundamentally an issue about an aggressive Russian state that we have to combat.
But you haven't done as much as the American government has done. Why don't you follow their lead in some of the sanctions that they've imposed? Isn't it embarrassing for the British government not to have followed Donald Trump's lead on this?
Well, I disagree, and there are various issues concerning the US and Russia, of course. I think we have been extremely strong on this issue.
Specifically in response to the Salisbury attack. I mean, you will know, was it 3 or 4 weeks ago, he announced lots of new sanctions against Russia purely because of the Salisbury attack. And I thought at the time, well, how bizarre that the British government hasn't done this before America, and it still hasn't.
Well, I think what this is about is getting international agreement to tackle the scourge that Russia is proving to be in the international community. I think this is not just about the UK's unilateral action, it's about making sure that we get our allies on board, and that is what Theresa May has successfully done.
Liam, you spent quite a lot of time living in Moscow. You probably know more about this subject than anyone around this table, I guess. Do you think that the British government has done enough?
Well, I think in the aftermath of the tragic events in Salisbury, still shocking just to think about it, the use of nerve agent in an English cathedral town, I think the British government and our diplomatic service showed what a force to be reckoned with they can be, building that international coalition. I think a lot of the members of that coalition, though, who joined together to condemn Russia, want to see some evidence. We're now on the next step towards concrete evidence, with Theresa May telling the Commons today that 2 Russian citizens have been charged. There's enough evidence to charge them. What's vital now is that in trying to root out what happened in Salisbury, we maintain our reputation around the world, which is very valuable, for due process and evidence-based sanctions. So I want to make sure that we're not quick to rush to accusations, but there seemed to be a fair hearing, and then people are charged. I think it's very important that the City of London maintains its integrity. We're the biggest service exporter in the world. That centre of that effort is financial services. We really are a superpower. We have to maintain those key standards in our auditing, in our oversight of where money's coming from and who owns it, and making sure it isn't ill-gotten gains. I was shocked by the Carillion scandal, as you know, Ian, showing the problems in our auditing industry.
Rather good documentary on it, didn't you?
I did indeed, for Channel 4. But this points to a broader sort of laxness and lack of regulatory oversight of a lot of our financial services industries, which includes finding out the origins of international money from Russia and elsewhere.
Andrew.
But I entirely agree with the action the government's taken on this. I think Theresa May has been robust. She did rally our allies. There's always more we can be done, and Liam knows a lot about this, and I think tackling more money laundering and front organisations and so on is important. My big concern about this, though, is that we're not cracking down hard enough on Russian propaganda. Why do we still allow British politicians to be paid, in many cases, very large sums of money for fronting RT, Russia Today, which is a Putin-funded propaganda channel? Now, Ian, you don't get anywhere near it. I don't think you would agree.
I've never been on it. I don't think I have anyway.
You do this highly reputable LBC station. I don't think you would agree to be paid by President Putin to front a show, would you? But the former First Minister of Scotland, Alex Salmond, has been fronting a show being paid large sums of money by.
To be fair to Alex Salmond, and let's not kick a man when he's down, but I
was saying all this before. I should say he shouldn't be being paid by the Russian government.
He's not an elected politician any longer. He's effectively a private citizen. So
he's a former First Minister of Scotland. I don't think he can get away with that.
But what I think a lot of people object to is current MPs from all parties who appear on Russia Today.
Well, they offered to pay me a very large sum of money to appear, and they are offering a lot of MPs money to appear. And I regret to say,
can I ask how much?
Many thousands of pounds.
Really?
Yeah. And
do what?
To appear, to give interviews. on Russia Today. I don't believe this is acceptable. And though I think there are issues about banning the channel entirely, though actually I think Ofcom should look at that because there have been flagrant breaches of the duties of impartiality on that channel, I certainly do not think the British politicians should be taking money from the Russian government to appear on a Russian propaganda channel.
Gisela Stewart.
Can I come back to the money thing? Because I think they're probably not only will we have to do more on that, but it would have to be in terms of international cooperation. Because if you look at, I think there's currently a real scandal brewing with the Danish banks, which something like 36 billion of Russian money being channeled through there. I think the German banks are very heavily exposed. So I think that this is work in progress, but I think the British government on this occasion has given a lead, but more needs to be done.
Right, we're going to go to a break a little early because then we can go to another question and get a good 15-minute run up until the top of the hour. It's 8:42 here on LBC.
Eddie Mair, weekdays from 4 p.m. on LBC.
You're asking a lot of questions about the Labour leader. Do you think he's an anti-Semite?
When people are saying things in your name, it is your duty as a leader to absolutely reject it.
And you feel he hasn't rejected it. What do you think that makes him?
We're an educational charity, and I encourage people to stand up for what they believe.
Well, why don't you stand up and tell me whether you think he's an anti-Semite?
Eddie Mair.
With which impartial reviews and advice, keep questioning.
LBC.
Disaster can strike as quick as a flash. Now it's all about damage limitation and having a response team that can act fast. Ideal Response can be on the scene within 2 hours, working 24/7 to ensure damage caused by fire, smoke and water is kept to a minimum. Ideal Response, the 24-hour damage restoration and specialist hygiene service. Our business is restoring yours.
With a welcome bonus from the no annual fee British Airways American Express credit card, your next getaway's not far away. So whether it's welcome to drifting down the canals of Amsterdam or bienvenue to midnight strolls in Paris, say welcome to a European adventure. Spend £1,000 in your first 3 months of card membership and get 5,000 bonus Avios. That's enough to get away to Europe sooner. Search BA Amex to find out more. Representative 22.9% APR variable. Applicants must be 18 years old or over and approval is subject to status. Conditions and exclusions apply.
That's a Swale heating engineer setting off to help another customer. We have over 250 highly qualified engineers on hand 24 hours a day, 365 days a year to deal with your boiler installations and emergency breakdowns. Visit swaleheating.com. Rely on us to keep you warm.
Range Rover Evoque is at home at the city's most stylish addresses and in the countryside's wildest destinations. It can cross continents and take 5 friends to the theatre. It's equally at ease with a walk on the wild side as it is delivering a table of 5 to their favourite restaurant. Range Rover Evoque, born in the wild, adapted to the city. This September from just £349 a month on Land Rover personal contract hire. Search Evoque offer for details. Land Rover, above and beyond.
Initial rental £4,188, 36-month term, subject to status, 10,000 miles per annum. Mileage and return conditions apply. Offer ends 30th of September 2018. Available at participating retailers only. Visit landrover.co.uk.
I'll never forget that phone call. I used to speak to Mum every Wednesday. She loved to chat. She tried talking to me about organ donation once, and I was like, Mum, why do you want to talk about that? Don't be so morbid. She died soon after. We never did talk about it. And I'll never know if she wanted to be an organ donor or not.
It's Organ Donation Week. Join the millions of people that have already told their family they want to be an organ donor. Don't leave it until it's too late. Words save lives.
I want Poppy to play cricket for England.
I want Sam to stop screaming.
I want Joe to live a little.
I want Naomi to live a lot.
I want Becky to invent a cure for the common cold.
Whatever the future holds for your children, Vitality Life Insurance want to make it happy, healthy and secure. So when you take out our Wellness Optimizer, you'll get up to 40% off your life insurance premiums.
I want the twins to keep on being happy.
I just want whatever the twins are on.
Just search Vitality Life Insurance. Additional product, minimum monthly premiums and conditions apply.
Leading Britain's conversation. Cross Question with Iain Dale. Tweet at LBC.
It's 8:46 here on LBC. Next week on Cross Question, we have Brandon Lewis, the Conservative Party chairman, Laurie Penny, the New Statesman writer, and Claire Fox from the Academy of Ideas. And Labour have promised us a senior shadow cabinet member, so I can't tell you who that is because I don't actually know. And just to also tell you, if you've missed any of today's Cross Question, we are making a podcast of it. It will be up on iTunes or Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcast from. Well, hopefully within the hour after the show finishes. Might have to do a bit of editing at the beginning, though. I'm looking at my producer with fierce eyes. Right, let's go to your next question. FA is in Chatham in Kent. FA, what would you like to ask?
Thanks, Iain, for having me on. Good show. And I think you're fair and balanced.
Thank you very much. In the sense of the Fox News fair and balanced? Or?
I was about to say, I don't mention Fox. Get me going here. The question that was asked was, how are we tackling, money laundering from Russia? Liz Truss, she didn't answer the question, and I think she has to answer the question. You're quite right, actually. The Americans are doing more than us in the UK. Why is that? She should answer the question. Liam Hannigan, I'm actually quite disappointed in his response. I never knew he lived in Russia. You're talking about due process. You can't subject people to a process they're not prepared to lend themselves to. So, it's more or less like a cop-out here. Answer the question. The real issue is, if we wanted to take punitive financial action against the Russians, we can do it. But for some reason, they're reluctant to do it. And that's why people like me, I have no... Politicians just talk, warm words. They just talk, no action. Deal with the issue. Take some tough action.
Right.
And it's symptomatic of the way the Prime Minister has been dealing with, with issues like this, Brexit, the governor of the Bank of England saying something pretty dramatic today. We're not being forthright. Politicians are not being forthright. For some reason, they're scared to say what they believe.
All right, well, let's find out from Liz Truss. First of all, are you scared to be forthright on this? And
no, I'm absolutely not.
Is the real reason why the British government isn't taking enough action on money laundering because of all the Russian money that's in the City of London, and you're rather afraid that there might be a big outflow?
We are taking action on money laundering. We have very, very tough money laundering rules in this country. I mean, there are legitimate Russian citizens who invest in this country, and I don't think
donate
it's
money to the Conservative Party.
Well, that has got nothing to do with it. This is about making sure that we are fair by the rule of law, that we don't take arbitrary decisions, but we do have tough rules and we have transparency. But importantly, that we get the international community to agree to those rules as well, because what we don't want is for our allies to have different financial rules from the rules we have. But the Americans already have, because they've announced their measures and you haven't followed suit. Well, we don't have exactly the same rules as America. We don't have exactly the same financial structures as America. I don't think just because America do something, we should automatically follow it. Theresa May has been incredibly tough on the Russian situation, in huge contrast to the Labour Party, who refused to admit that it was the Russians behind the attack in the first place. So I think we have taken firm action, but Britain has very strong legal standards. We believe in the rule of law. It's important that people are treated fairly.
Andrew, you want to come in?
I think that was a slightly cheap shot by Liz at the end. Labour supported all the measures that the government's proposed. What measure has the government proposed, Liz, that we haven't supported? We've supported them all.
Well, I distinctly remember when the attack took place that Jeremy Corbyn refused to admit that this was an action by the Russian state, even though the evidence was pretty clear, and there was all kinds of fudging around it, Andrew.
Yeah, I don't think that's really good enough. We supported all the measures. We need national solidarity.
Well, you might have done, but that isn't what we heard from Jeremy Corbyn.
Hold on, the Labour Party has supported all the measures. I think it's unworthy to say that that's not the case. We stand together on this. None of us want to see murder on the streets of Salisbury, and we're all resisting this together.
And I think on this one, Labour MPs like Chris Bryant from the Labour benches for years have been campaigning for the Magnitsky Law, have been bringing up Russia in the House of Commons at a time when it was not fashionable, when the government wasn't listening. So I think you may want to draw a distinction with some people on the front bench of Labour, but if you collectively look at the MPs from Labour in the House of Commons, I think they have been very tough on this, haven't actually brought about many changes.
FA had to go at you there, Liam Halligan. He said, how can you exercise due process on states which use nerve agents? Fair question.
It is, and I'd like to see due process, and congratulations to our investigatory authorities that have now got enough evidence to press charges. That's good news, and let's see what happens. I don't apologise for having lived in Russia. I was a correspondent for The Economist and other newspapers, if that's okay. And there is a note of caution here, because yes, we don't want an over-aggressive Russian state, but we mustn't condemn 150 million Russian people, many of whom have entirely legitimate businesses, and some of which are international. We want to encourage trade and exchange between ourselves and Russia to the extent that it's done lawfully, and we have to be careful with sanctions. We have to strike a balance. Look at the huge trade links that there are between Russia and the European Union. We still rely on Russia for 40% of our gas. Germany has its own private pipeline from northern Russia across the Baltic, and another one is being built. So there's a lot of realpolitik going on here, but I'm glad we're pressing charges, and I wait with bated breath to see what happens.
Okay. Well, let's move on to another question. Really interesting subject. This caused a lot of controversy. It was on the front page of the Daily Mail today. David is in Uxbridge. What's your question, David?
Yeah, hi. My question's in light of that report by the IPPR think tank, and it declared that the UK economic model is fundamentally unjust. It fails working people, and it fails to deliver for the social good and public services. And in light of that, is it time for the country to move away from free market, what I would call neoliberal orthodoxy, trickle-down economics that has been told that the rising tide lifts all boats? That's clearly proved that it's not the case, and we need to look at other models that are going to be more sustainable and deliver for ordinary people, not just those at the top. And because we've got huge wealth inequalities, we've got structural imbalances in the UK economy, we've got a heavily financialised system, we've got poor investment in the so there's all these array of problems, and the social fabric is fragmenting.
Okay.
I'd like the panel to comment on that, and what other models they would think about.
All right. Well, David's basically saying, has the free market neoliberal thinking failed? I'm tempted to come to you first, Liam, as you're an economics commentator, but I'm not going to. I'm going to Gisela.
You tease.
Well, if you go back to the great German post-war economic miracle, as it was called, which was led by a man called Ludwig Erhard, who said, markets are social. I'm a firm believer that challenging vested interests, challenging monopolies is what delivers you economic prosperity. However, I do think the inequalities have been increasing, and to me, and that's one of the things since leaving Parliament, which I spent more time on than on anything else, and Andrew may thoroughly agree with me on this one, is I think devolution outside England, addressing the skill space, actually making the rest of the country north of the M25 much more competitive. And I think that's the way we start addressing, because what happens at the moment, it's not just intergenerational differences getting wider and wider, but also the divergence between the regions outside the big cities, our towns, for example. There's huge neglect, and I think that's the thing which we've got to address.
Do you think that Jeremy Corbyn has really hit on something here, where he's detected among the general population that there is a great dissatisfaction with how the so-called free market neoliberal approach to economics hasn't really worked for people right at the bottom?
It is true, it hasn't worked for the people right at the bottom, but I think they're drawing slightly the wrong conclusion. I'll give you one example. With wearing the Change Britain hat, we did some attitudinal surveys, and I was quite struck how the under 35s, for example, were terribly in favour of nationalising the railways. And I was wondering, are these Thatcher's children or are they Corbyn's children? I mean, what they're responding to. And when we asked further questions, they just thought, at the moment, the railways cost us a lot of money. It's a rubbish service, so we might as well nationalise them because it can't get any worse. So I think there's a disillusionment with the state that it doesn't deliver. So the last thing is the answer to say that the answer to this problem is more state.
Now, we've only got 4 minutes left, so I'm going to have to ask you to keep your answers brief. Liz Truss.
Well, I think we've got to look at the positive things in Britain. So we've got the lowest unemployment since 1975. We've got fewer children in workless households. We are seeing economic growth. We're seeing massive investment in new industries, which is very, very exciting. Now, that's not to say everything's perfect. We do have challenges in this country. Andrew has to be congratulated for the work he did on academies, which is improving our, the next generation's educational opportunities.
I think we should finish the programme there with this unity.
But to say, that we should abandon our model and become like Venezuela is just nonsense.
I don't think anybody's suggesting that, are they?
And I actually agree with Gisela as well. We need to take on the vested interest. One of the biggest problems we've got is housing. That housing isn't affordable enough. We need to build more houses. We need to challenge the NIMBYs. That's the way we can spread wealth and create more equality.
Okay, Andrew?
Well, I don't want to become like Venezuela. I do want to become a bit more like Scandinavia, where there's greater equality in society. You don't have this big problem of an underclass which bedevils so much of British society. And whereas Gisela said, we have these huge inequalities between regions, and everything she said about empowering the towns and cities outside London, I think is hugely important. If I look at things that have worked over the last 20 years, I think having a Scottish Parliament and devolution to Scotland, a Welsh Assembly, a Northern Ireland Assembly, and setting up mayors has been a big step forward. We need to give them real tax-raising powers, the ability to make a big difference in their areas. There's a big agenda here. The person who was saying things need to change this morning, remember, was the Archbishop of Canterbury. I don't think he's a raging Marxist. I don't think he wants us to go towards Venezuela too. I think he might think Scandinavia is quite a good idea,
I'm zipping my lip on that one. Liam Halligan.
Well, it's a great question from Uxbridge, a place close to my heart, to end this first edition of your new show, Ian. I agree with much of the analysis. Capitalism isn't working for a lot of people. We're in an age of crony capitalism. I've got a article coming out on the front of the Spectator this week saying exactly that. There are far too many big overbearing companies now. Far too many sectors are over-concentrated. Banks, energy companies, house builders, and all this means that consumers are getting a worse deal and people feel they're being ripped off. But the answer, David, to bad capitalism isn't no capitalism, it's good capitalism. We need capitalism to work better. We need competition policy to smash up those big companies and let 1,000 flowers bloom, and we haven't got that. I personally think, with all respect to people here, politicians are far too close to the big corporations these days. There's far too much chasing of campaign donations, particularly in the US, but also here in the UK. We need leaders, politicians who will stand up to big corporations, regulate them so they behave. That doesn't always mean more regulation. It means smarter, leaner, better regulation, and put consumers first. I understand why so many consumers feel ripped off. Since the financial crisis, wages have been largely stagnant. Mad policies by central banks have caused massive increases in wealth inequality as asset prices have soared for those who already own big assets. And unless mainstream politicians grab this and try and make capitalism work better, then we are going to move increasingly to the extremes, and that includes big state solutions, which history shows have not worked.
Well, that brings us, unfortunately, to the end of our hour of the first cross question on LBC. Thank you to Liz Truss, Andrew Adonis, Gisela Stewart and Liam Halligan. Next week, we will be joined by Brandon Lewis, the chairman of the Conservative Party, Laurie Penny, the New Statesman writer, and Claire Fox from the Academy of Ideas, and also a Labour Party representative. So possibly 3 Remainers and 1 Brexiteer on the panel. But there we go. You can't have everything. What did you say?
I'm willing to come on again. Ian.
Are you?
If Jeremy can't provide anyone.
Maybe we should make you a permanent panellist, Andrew.
Vote again, Andrew. All time. You've done it for me.
Now, if you missed any of today's cross question, or you want to listen again, you can download the podcast on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts from a little bit later this evening, and that'll be the same every week. This is LBC. It's 9 o'clock.
On your radio, on your phone, and here.
Play LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. This